There I was, standing in the middle of my own life. It felt like a party I had not been invited to. Everything looked right from the outside. I had the job, the apartment, the friends, but inside a quiet emptiness had made its home. It was a strange feeling, like wearing shoes that were a size too small. They looked fine, but they pinched with every step. I would wake up in the morning, on this day, July 9th, 2025, look in the mirror and see a stranger. Who was this person going through the motions? She smiled at the right times and said the right things, but her heart was not in it. I felt completely and utterly lost. This feeling wasn't a sudden storm. It was more like a slow, creeping fog. It started with small questions that I would push away. Am I happy? Is this what I really want? The questions grew louder over time, impossible to ignore. I was living a life that was built on a foundation of shoulds. I should want this career. I should enjoy these hobbies. I should be grateful. But the truth was, I felt none of it. I was an actor playing a part, and I had forgotten where the script ended and my true self began. The applause from the world felt hollow because I knew I was not being authentic. My days became a blur of routine. Wake up, go to work, eat dinner, watch TV, sleep, repeat. There was no joy, no spark, no sense of purpose. I felt like a ghost haunting my own existence, moving through rooms and conversations without truly being present. I would scroll through photos of other people living vibrant lives, and a deep ache would settle in my chest. They seemed so sure of who they were, so comfortable in their own skin. I yearned for that kind of certainty, that feeling of being truly at home with myself. The disconnect between the life I was living and the life I craved was a canyon, and I was standing on the edge, afraid to jump. The turning point came on a quiet Tuesday evening. I was making pasta, a simple task, but I suddenly started to cry. The tears were not for any particular reason, but for everything all at once. It was a release of all the confusion, the loneliness, the feeling of being a fraud in my own story. I realized I could not continue this way. I could not spend the rest of my years feeling like a passenger. I had to take the wheel. That night, I made a promise to myself. I would go on a journey, not to another country, but inward. A journey to find the person I had lost somewhere along the way. My journey of self-discovery did not begin with a grand gesture. There was no plane ticket to a faraway land, no dramatic farewell. Instead, it started quietly, with a simple notebook and a pen. I decided to spend just 10 minutes every morning writing down whatever was in my head. No rules, no judgment. Some days, I wrote about my dreams. Other days, I wrote about what I ate for breakfast. It felt silly at first, but slowly, a pattern emerged. I started to see my own thoughts on the page, separate from the noise of the world. It was the first time in a long time that I had truly listened to myself. After a few weeks of writing, I took another small step. I started taking myself on dates. Every Saturday I would do something by myself that I had always wanted to try. One week, I went to an art museum and spent an hour staring at a single painting. Another week, I took a pottery class and felt the simple joy of creating something messy and imperfect with my own hands. I walked in the park without my phone, just noticing the way the sunlight filtered through the leaves. These small adventures were just for me. They were my way of showing myself that my own company was worth keeping and my own interests were valid. Food became another path to myself. For years, I had eaten what was quick and convenient, never paying much attention to the experience. I decided to change that. I started cooking meals from scratch, choosing fresh ingredients and paying attention to the smells and sounds of the kitchen. I would sit down at the table, without the distraction of a screen, and truly taste my food. I discovered I loved the spiciness of ginger and the sweetness of roasted carrots. It was more than just eating. It was a form of self-care. It was a way of nourishing my body with the same attention I was trying to give my soul. These little changes began to add up. They were like small stones dropped into a still pond, creating ripples that spread outward. I started saying no to things that I did not want to do. I unfollowed social media accounts that made me feel inadequate. I filled my home with things that brought me joy: a scented candle, a soft blanket, a playlist of my favorite old songs. Each choice, no matter how small, was a vote for the person I wanted to become. I was slowly, carefully building a life that felt like my own, one small, intentional act at a time. It was not a race. It was a slow and gentle dance with myself. This journey was not always filled with sunshine and pottery classes. There were difficult days. As I started to listen to my own voice, I also had to listen to the uncomfortable things it had to say. I had to face the fears and insecurities that I had been avoiding for so long. One of the biggest challenges was loneliness. As I spent more time with myself, I realized that some of my old friendships were based on the person I used to pretend to be. Letting go of those connections, even though they were no longer right for me, was painful. It felt like I was cutting ties with parts of my past. Another shadow I had to face was the fear of judgment. What would people think of me for changing? Would they call me selfish for putting my own needs first? This fear was like a loud critic in my head, constantly telling me I was making a mistake. There were days when this voice was so loud that I wanted to retreat back into my old life, where things were familiar and safe. To overcome this, I had to learn to be my own best friend. I would talk to myself with kindness, reminding myself that it was okay to grow and change. I was not abandoning anyone. I was simply finding myself. There were moments of deep doubt. I would wonder if I was just being dramatic or making a big deal out of nothing. Maybe I should just be grateful for what I had and stop searching for something more. This is the challenge of the inner critic, that voice that tries to keep you small and safe. I learned to challenge these thoughts. When my mind said, "You are being selfish," I would respond with, "I'm practicing self-care." When it said, "You will end up alone," I would answer, "I am learning to enjoy my own company." It was a constant conversation, a gentle but firm negotiation with my own fears. Overcoming these challenges required a great deal of patience. Self-discovery is not a linear process. There were days when I felt like I had taken 10 steps backward. On those days, I learned to be gentle with myself. I would remind myself that healing is not a straight line. It is a spiral. Sometimes you have to revisit old wounds to fully heal them. I learned that my dark days did not mean I was failing. They were just part of the journey. They were the shadows that helped me appreciate the light even more, a necessary part of the whole picture. Through this journey, the biggest lesson I learned was about authenticity. I discovered that I am not a person who enjoys loud parties or fast-paced environments. I am a person who loves quiet mornings, deep conversations, and the smell of old books. I learned that my worth is not tied to my job title or my accomplishments. My worth is inherent. It is in my kindness, my curiosity, and my ability to feel deeply. For the first time, I felt like I was living in my own skin, not just borrowing it. The stranger in the mirror was gone, replaced by a friend I was excited to get to know better. I also learned the profound power of self-compassion. For years, I had been my own harshest critic. I learned to replace that criticism with kindness. When I made a mistake, instead of beating myself up, I would ask, what can I learn from this? This shift in my inner dialogue changed everything. It allowed me to take risks and be vulnerable without the paralyzing fear of failure. I understood that being human means being imperfect, and that is not only okay, it is beautiful. My flaws are not weaknesses. They are part of what makes me uniquely me, and I wouldn't trade them. The journey taught me that happiness is not a destination you arrive at. It is a practice. It is found in the small, everyday moments, the warmth of a cup of tea, the sound of rain on the window, a genuine smile from a stranger. I stopped chasing big dramatic moments of joy and started appreciating the quiet, steady stream of contentment that was always available to me. I learned to find beauty in the ordinary, to be present in the here and now. This is where true peace resides, not in some far-off future, but right here, in this moment. If you are feeling lost, my advice is to start small. You do not need to change your entire life overnight. Just start by asking yourself one simple question: what do I need right now? Maybe the answer is a glass of water, a 5-minute walk, or a moment of silence. Listen to that small, quiet voice inside you and honor what it says. Be patient with yourself. Be kind to yourself. The journey to finding yourself is the most important trip you will ever take. It is the journey back home, to the person you have always been.